Hello everyone, this is Wendy with Buckeye Glass Studio. This is the beginning of my series for beginners. In this video, I am going to show you how to cut glass. Now, I've got my work surface. This is one of the Egg Crate lighting panels that you can get at a home store. And this is nice to use on top of your work surface. As you can see, bits of glass can fall into those little spaces, and then you don't end up getting your hands on those little bits. It's hard to see here, but I have a piece of thin window glass, plain old window glass. That is the best for you to start cutting on for practicing. I want to show you two different style cutters. I have an old style cutter here. I have my pistol grip. And then for our pliers, I have breakers, runners. There's my breakers again. There's the runners, and let me grab my Grozer pliers. Grozer pliers have some serrated teeth on them and definite jaw. Alright, I am going to show you how to do some cutting. Move that out of the way. For a regular cutter that is not oil fed, it's best to have a glass. You can use a little glass jar. I have my cup here. In the bottom, I have some paper toweling. And you put some cutter oil in it, and that is how you store your cutter. Now, years ago, before this type of cutter oil was invented, we used lightweight motor oil. That works just as well. With this style cutter, I do it with the teeth towards me. I put my fingers around it. There is a spot here that is meant to hold your thumb and your forefinger. And I'm going to put it on the edge of my glass. Hold it upright. And I'm going to draw the cutter towards me. Now, you don't always have to hear it scoring. It's always a plus if you do. Now, in this instance where we're separating long pieces of glass, you take your runner pliers, and runner pliers have a line on them. This one's kind of hard to see. Let me take my Sharpie marker and mark it. And I'll show you, there's a difference between the top and the bottom of runner pliers. In this style, you can see the lower jaw has a slight curve on it. And with the runner pliers, you center the line with the line you made on your glass. And that's what happens. All right. I also want to mention that I have an ebook available now, and that makes a good companion to these beginner videos. It's available in my Etsy shop. It's only $12.95. It's downloadable, and it would be perfect for you to follow along with these videos with that instructional book. All right, I'm going to do one more cut, one more straight cut. I'm going to use my oil-fed cutter. Now, I do have, I want to show you there's a mistake in this glass. It's hard to see laying on it, but you see, it didn't break right. And that may have had to do with us not hearing that score when I began it. Now, let's see if that's going to break away for me. Now, it didn't. The reason I do these videos and I don't edit them is because I want you to see mistakes can happen. There was not a nice enough score, so that is why that didn't break well, and this glass just cracked here and here. It's better to learn on clear glass, especially cheap clear window glass, than to have mistakes like this happen with your more expensive stained glass. Now I'm going to take my oil-fed cutter and I'm going to cut, I'll show it to you here. I'm going to cut along here and break away where this glass is cracked. So basically we're going to start with a fresh piece. Now we heard that. Let me break that away. All right, so now we're working with a piece of glass that doesn't have any cracks in it. All right, let me move this out of the way. Okay. All right, I was going to do a straight score with my oil-fed pistol grip. All right. You can hold it different ways. Sometimes I end up holding my cutter like this. I do have a little bit of arthritis, but pistol grips are supposed to be easier for older hands, and so you hold it this way. Again, you're holding it upright like we did that steel wheel one. All right, I'm holding it upright at the edge. I'm going to draw the score towards me. All right, take our runner pliers, line up the line on your runner pliers with the line you made on the glass, and there we go. And that was a good score. Again, hard to see on this clear glass. It was a good score. It broke correctly the whole way down. All right, what I always teach my students as a good beginner piece, draw a circle. It'll give you some experience of cutting around a shape. And then we usually take that after we cut it to the grinder with a brief little lesson on how to do grinding. All right, I am going to just draw a circle. Let me use the base of my glass here and use that as a pattern. I am just going to trace around that glass. Not perfect, but it'll work. Pretend that's a pattern piece out of stained glass, and we want to separate that from all the extra glass we don't need. Starting at the edge, we're going to break away this excess piece. And it's okay to go alongside your pattern piece. All right, this bigger piece, I'm going to move out of the way. We've got this piece here. Again, we're going to cut away excess. All right, I feel comfortable holding the glass and breaking it. I'm going to hold it like this with my thumbs and give basically upward pressure like that. When you feel comfortable handling glass like that, you can do it with your bare hands. Just be very careful. All right, again, I'm going to cut the excess away. If you feel more comfortable using your pliers, please use your pliers. I have a lot more experience and I don't feel afraid of doing it with my hands. I have learned over the years too, a paper cut hurts worse than a glass cut, but you still have to be careful. All right, we've got our circle, if you can see that. Now what's left is cutting around our piece. So I'm going to do that. And you can see how I'm holding the cutter here. I hold it different ways while I'm doing my cutting. Whatever feels comfortable for what I'm doing at the time. I'm going to go ahead and score there. Score around. Please bear with me. I've got my camera on one of those around the neck devices. And so I'm trying to look at that to make sure I've got everything in the shot, and then also looking at what I'm cutting. I'm going to use my grozers. They're also called breaker grozers. On these, there is also a definite top and bottom. The bottom jaw is that curved one, and this one happens to have a little arrow on it, so that tells me it's the top. That is a straighter edge. We want that at the top. And what that does is takes those little pieces of glass off. Again, we're holding our piece of glass steady in one hand, and then we've got our breaker grozers in this hand, and light little pressure lifting up. And like that. And then you can go in and get your little bits with that serrated jaw on both sides of these grozers. You're able to chew off little bits. You just have to be careful. You don't want to break away anything important and too much of your piece. But it saves you from doing extra grinding. When it comes to pattern pieces, sorry, I'm trying to look at my circle. All right. When it comes to pattern pieces, think about it. If this was a pattern piece, let's say a sunflower, the center of a sunflower. We traced our pattern piece onto the glass. Everything that is marker and outside is extra. The actual pattern piece is what's inside the marker. So when we do our cutting, we have to take that into consideration. We don't want to come too far in and have gaps, and we don't want to have too much excess. Then our sun catchers or panels that we're working on, our pieces will be too big, things won't fit as well. So we want to have our pieces, when we're cutting and grinding, just on or within our marker. All right. I've shown you how to do straight cuts. I've shown you how to do a circle. We broke away all the excess first, and then we went in around the pattern piece. I want you to practice. I can do some crazy cuts if you'd like to watch them. You can practice to try and do some big curves or maybe some wavy lines and see how well and how that breaks for you, how well it runs, how well the glass breaks. You can practice to see what's possible and what's not possible. All right, let's try an S-curve. This glass is pretty thin. It may break well for us, it may not. So let's give it a try. All right. Curve there, curve this way, curve that way, and off the edge. All right, let's see what happens. I'm going to give light even pressure on the runners. Again, line up the line you made with the line you made on the glass doing the score. And you can see I'm going in maybe about a ½ inch to an inch. Now, if you give light even pressure, we should be able to break this away nice. Now, I'm not sure if you heard it, but I heard it. The glass broke about this far. I'm going to turn it around. And I'm going to line up my runners. with that line from this direction. And I'm going to give some pressure. And I'm going to move in a little bit. I can hear it breaking. And it did what we wanted. Can you see that? It did what we wanted. That helps if you can hear it breaking, but it doesn't go all the way through. You can turn your glass around and break from the other side. So we heard it go about this far from that direction when we did it. And then I came around with my runners and I gave light even pressure and then I broke it the rest of the way. So there's a quick little lesson on S-curves. When you're first starting out with stained glass, make sure you buy not necessarily twice as much glass, but maybe 1.5 times, just to allow for accidents where things don't break right. All right, I'm going to show you quickly how to do an inside curve. All right, now I'm going to draw, I guess, a crescent moon shape. I guess it doesn't really matter where I do this on our piece of glass. All right. Move this over so you can see what I'm doing. All right. We got half a circle. And I'm getting some reflection off of my work light. I hope you can see this well enough. All right, we're going to go in and do a deep curve. All right, I'll color it in with some marker so you can see it a little better. All right, we're going to cut that out. Please, at any time during this video, you can pause it, do some of your own cutting, and then refer back to it. All right, like we did with our circle, we're going to cut away the excess. If you feel more comfortable pushing away when you do your cutting, you're more than welcome to do that. I've always been one where I draw it towards me when I'm doing my cutting. Lining up my runners with the line we made on the glass and breaking that away. Getting the excess away here. I feel comfortable enough. I'm not going to pick up the pliers. I'm just going to break it that way. All right. On inside curves, I like to not cut away the excess on the outside of the curve yet. I want to make sure this is going to break correctly before I end up doing that. All right. Best thing to do, and again, I cover this in my ebook. When you do an inside curve, you want to do a little bit at a time. Maybe 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, whatever you're comfortable with this. What you're going to do, you'll see me do it. I'm going to come in and do a little score here. And then I'm going to break it away with my grosers. I'll come in and do a little bit more. If you try and do this in one fell swoop, odds are it's going to want to break one of the tips off. You can try it. If it breaks well for you, awesome. But if it's expensive stained glass, sometimes you don't want to take the risk. So it's better to learn this way. All right, I'm going to come in, and I'm having trouble on this clear glass, seeing what's what. I'm going to take off a little bit of that curve. Okay. I've got my breaker grosers. Line up your jaw here. I didn't tell you this when we were doing the circle. You line up the jaw with the line you made on the glass. you want to be just a little bit this side of it. And then what I do, I use my finger as a guide on the back. I don't want my lower jaw going past that score we made. So I use that as a barrier so my pliers don't go any further. I've got a good grip on my glass, and breaking like we broke with the other, break that away. Now, if you can understand what I'm trying to show you here, when you break it, you're kind of going up in the middle and you're separating the pieces. Don't break down. You're more likely to take what's in your pliers and end up poking your other hand. So kind of pull up and away when you're doing that. All right, we got that broke and separated. Now I'm going to do a little bit more. And that looks to be, not quite a quarter of an inch, maybe a little less. Again, I got my pliers just this side of the score. I'm putting my finger as a stop underneath there and breaking them away. And can you see how that's coming along? A little bit at a time. Now, we may be able to break the rest of this away in one piece, but we might do the stop and listen method. I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, I'm going to use my finger as a stop here. You see how sometimes my cutter was rolling off the edge. You can place your finger on the edge of the glass as a stop, and we tip that up. All right, let's try it another way. I'll use my thumb as a stop and my other finger to hold the glass down. Again, I'm not editing out all these oopses. I want you to learn from my oopses because you know what? They happen to all of us. All right. These can be called breakers or grozers. If you hear me call them both, it's the same thing. But breaker pliers, I don't have a narrow pair of breakers. I've got a very wide pair of breakers, and breakers are smooth-jawed and straight. They're not like the grozers that have the rough surface, variegated surface, and a curve on it. So if there's any confusion there, you'll hear me call them breakers, grozers, breaker grozers. But in this case, at least you know what I'm talking about, no matter what I may call them. All right, let's see how this breaks. We may do the kind of slow and listen. No, it's not wanting to give. It did. Okay. It did what we wanted. You can see I scored it a little bit too far on there. That's my fault trying to look through the camera and look at what I'm doing with the cutter. But you see, we were able to get that out, and we have our inside curve now. Now, what I would like you to do is do some practice. If you can find some clear window glass, maybe you have a piece of picture frame glass that might have a broken corner that you have sitting around, or you know somebody that works with window glass, and you can get some fairly decent size. Yeah, you know what I'm getting at. It's fairly decent sized pieces that you can play with and practice on. Practice to see how the glass cuts or breaks incorrectly. I want you to do some practicing, and this will be the end of this video. And then the next step, I will show you how to grind. No, I was going to say, no, I don't think we're going to end the video here. I am going to pause it, and then I'm going to show you how to grind that circle that I cut out. And that will be a beginning guide to the grinder. So let me pause, and then we'll get back to that. Okay, we are back. I had to get my grinder ready a little bit. I had to clear off my face shield. It had some grinder grit accumulated on the underside. I had to add some water to my grinder. It had been a few days since I used it. There is a water reservoir under here that feeds a sponge that is up against the bit, and it's a diamond coated bit. And what that does is it keeps it cool. It also keeps the glass grit down and away. Now I'm going to do this without finger protection. I usually, if I have a lot of pieces, I grind, and you'll see me with these when we start grinding stained glass. I wear these rubber finger cots, finger protectors. They have a little bit of texture on the tips. I use those. You still can get cut through these, but it's a little bit of protection anyway. So you'll see me use those in our first grinding stained glass video. But for this piece, I want to show you some things with this with glass grinders. And so I'm not going to wear any protection. What I want to show you is you cannot hurt your fingers on this grinder bit. You may grind your fingernails, but as far as putting your finger up against it, you are not going to hurt yourself. Where you can get hurt is, and let me grab the circle we cut. Where you get hurt is the sharp edges and pushing the glass into the bit. The sharp edges on your glass can end up cutting your fingers. So I just want to show you. I'm going to turn the grinder on. You cannot hurt yourself. You can grind your fingernails, and I touched mine up with my emery board the other day. I'm not going to show you can grind your fingernails, but trust me, it can. You cannot hurt yourself on this grinder bit, okay? Where you can get hurt is, like I said, pushing the glass into the bit. Now, what a grinder does is it prepares your glass for the next step, which would be foiling. And it also shapes your pattern pieces, especially when it comes to curves. If you had cut some glass and it was a nice straight strip, and that was the kind of pattern or a piece you needed, say you were working on a window where you just had some straight edge pieces bordering it. Even if you have a nice clean cut, there's going to be a sharpness to the glass, and you want to run it at least once down the grinder bit to get the glass prepared for the foiling. All right, in this, you're going to watch me shape our circle a little bit better and take off those sharp edges. You hold it up to the bit, and it's better when you use these 4 fingers. If you do not hold on to your glass well, when the piece gets up to the bit, it can fly off your grinder. So you want to keep a hold of your piece of glass. And you can see the grinder, it can spit water. I made this kind of splash guard that I put around my grinder. This was the box the grinder came in. I covered it with some contact paper, and I also have a rubber mat to help catch any water drippings. All right, let's grind this piece of glass. You can go both directions. If you push it too long, you will end up getting a divot in the glass. Let me show you what I mean. See what happens? We got a divot. So you do have to be careful when you do that. You want to keep your piece of glass moving, so you don't end up grinding too much off. I'm going to try and grind away all that black marker, because if this was a real piece of stained glass, everything that's black marker and extra would be larger than the piece we need. smooth out that divot I made. And there you have it. Grab a rag. Always fun when you're working with regular clear and trying to show you what I'm doing. But there you have it. There's that circle that we cut out, all ground. All right, I am going to end this video here. I want you to practice some more of your cutting, your scoring, using your breakers or grozers and your runners, and do some more practice, because the next video will be us doing a small sun catcher in stained glass. Now, if you enjoy my videos, please subscribe. And again, I want to mention that ebook I made. It's available on my Etsy shop, and it would be a great companion to these beginner videos. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.